Hi, love. Welcome to the Way of Grace YouTube channel. My name is Nina, if you're new here. And Way of Grace is a space that's devoted to feminine restoration through relationship with God and remembrance of beloved identity. And if you've been here a million times, it's so beautiful to have your heart in this space and to co-weave alongside you. And I know it's been a while since I created a YouTube video. My life has been very full and expansive with many other exciting things going on. If you saw recently on my Instagram, I got married this last month to my beloved, and it's just been a month of celebration and goodness and joy and deepening of union. And I will create a YouTube episode on preparation for union, my personal path to union, in deepening union with my beloved, which all comes from first being in union with God. So I will I will go into the depths of that at some point. But today we're going to bring forward a conversation on desire. And this was actually inspired by a master class that I led a few weeks ago that was really transformational and expansive for the field of women who attended. So this is going to essentially be like a condensed teaching from what I shared about a month ago, but I really feel this will deeply serve any woman who is really desiring to hold the yearnings and longings on her heart more devotionally and to move out of a state of collapse or desperation or even over containment and suppression of desire, and to really come into the devotional truth of desire itself, which ultimately is a process of knowing how to hold ourselves and how to be deeply held by God. So before we dive into that, I just wanted to announce a couple of things and then I'll drop us into prayer. So, first announcement is we're currently in enrollment for my most immersive and intimate program held. This is a 5-month devotional space for any woman who really, really, really desires to restore her relationship with God, reconcile with the masculine, reclaim her beloved identity, and resurrect her cherished feminine essence. This is for the woman who wants to feel rested and regulated and resourced in life, in love, in business, in leadership. We travel through the multi-dimensional realms in this space. And again, this is my most personalized space for really deep support and very deep and intimate and nourishing sisterhood. So I'm going to drop all of the details for that group below. We're going to begin probably mid to end of January, but like I said, the early enrollment is now open, which reflects a savings of over $500 on the course itself. So you can always reach out to me too if you have any questions and are feeling like the pulse to join that space. I'm really happy to support you and answer anything that is alive on your heart. So I think that was the only announcement I really had. And before we go into this conversation, let's just drop ourselves into prayer. So just take a moment to let yourself get grounded. If you need to shake and wiggle for a moment to release any tension or stagnancy or anything that's been heavy thus far in your day, just take a moment to do that. And then just find the soles of the feet connected to the earth. Invite your legs to get a little bit heavier. Descend your tailbone down into the support that's resting below you. And really just encourage the lower half of your body to receive what is supporting you, whether that's a chair or your couch or the floor or the earth. Just imagine your legs, your hips, your buttocks, your feet, just dropping down into that sacred support of the earth itself. And then I just invite you to deepen your breath and see if you can really drop the breath down into your belly, Feeling the breath expand right behind your navel point. And as you exhale, just sense the navel drawing back towards the front of the spine. On your next inhale, allow the breath to rise from your belly all the way up into your heart. And maybe as you breathe out, just sigh, audibly exhale, relaxing the shoulders, the jaw, releasing any tension in the body. And just coming into full presence as you deepen your awareness on your breath and your body. And just awaken this awareness in your own heart. And dear God, I just thank you for gathering us here in this space together. We thank you for your goodness, your magnificence, your graciousness, your unconditional love. May I simply be a vessel for your love, your heart, your word, your wisdom, and your truth to move through in this conversation. And God, I pray that the women listening just really deepen into the devotional depths of their own holy ache. And may they know and trust that you are living and breathing in that place of desire that's held in their own hearts. May they remember that their desires are seeds of your magnificent vision. And may they trust that you are walking hand in hand with them and that you are making everything beautiful in its time. May we rest not only in our own faith, but may we find rest in your faithfulness, knowing that you are always working for our good, even if that means you're not working for our preferences. May we trust that you can do so much more with our faith and our trust and our surrender than we can do with our control and grasping and pressure. And may we just posture our hearts to your heart and receive the fullness of love that you so yearn to immerse us in. In Jesus' name, amen. And just allow the breath again to rise from the belly up into your heart space. And as you breathe out again, soften the shoulders, the jaw. You can just take your time coming fully into our space, into this state of listening and receptivity. And we're going to talk about desire, which is a really fun topic. It's, I think, a sexy topic. It can be an edgy topic. It can get a little shadowy. So we're going to just welcome all of the frequencies here as we explore the essence of desire itself. And I just invite you to feel in your body, what is your current relationship like with desire? When we even bring the frequency of desire into the field of your soma, where does desire land in the body? Is it in your womb, your belly, your heart, your throat, maybe somewhere else? And what does the sensation of desire feel like in your body? Is it expansive, light, lifted? Or perhaps it's heavy, dense. There might even be contraction or stickiness. And again, there's no right or wrong. We're just devotionally witnessing and getting curious, as to what is my relationship like with desire in this moment. And desire itself is a strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing for something to happen. And I feel our relationship with desire really invites us deeper into our own feminine descent, which essentially is just this process of learning how to hold ourselves and be held by God. It's really deepening into our feelings and emotions. It's knowing how to dilate and circulate sensation. And it's becoming responsible for our desires and the longings that have been placed on our hearts. And I'm just going to read something that I wrote a few months ago about desire. And I invite you to receive this in your body, not in your mind. So you might close your eyes and again, just take a few deep breaths to let this land in your soma. And I wrote here, desire will bring you down to your knees and ask you to hold the holiness of your ache. It will stretch your ability to meet sensation. It will encourage you to surrender your timing to divine timing. And it will invite you to let go of your control so that God can actually move a miracle. Our desire deepens into yearning, and our yearning opens us to love. It's here we transform the texture of desire from what I want to God. I want what you want for me. Softening into our longing and stroking it with curiosity alchemizes the desire from what owns you to what you inevitably become. As you embody her devotional depths, you catalyze her fulfillment. Your desires are seeds from God, but ultimately God has a far better delivery system than your own. Just take a breath into that and let that remembrance just dance in your own holy waters. And one of my favorite verses in scripture is found in the Gospel of John. And this might be my favorite chapter in the entire Bible. This is from John 15:7. And Christ says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire and it shall be done for you. And I really feel this verse speaks to the co-creational intimacy that we have with our Creator, right? As our hearts are postured to God's heart, our desires are naturally God's desires. We can trust that our desires are seeds from the Most High and the vision that God has for us. But again, we have to deepen into our trust and our faith in this gnosis that God is walking hand in hand with us and he's making everything beautiful in its time. And our only job truly is to dwell and rest in his goodness and in his faithfulness. And the word abide itself comes from the Greek word meno, which means dwelling place, home. My pastor Damon says it's quite literally a zip code. It's this remembrance of your inherent belonging and worth and wholeness as a daughter, as a son, as a child of God, remembering that you are incarnationally yoked to the divine, right? And also in John 15, Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches, my Father is the gardener, right? Like without me, no fruit can fully bear. There's this beautiful root system that we're anchored to as we walk with God and as we're in relationship with him. He is our roots. He is our nutrients. He's the sacred soil that we rest within so that fruit can bear beautifully on our tree, and God will pluck and prune whatever is not needed, whatever is not of his truth, so that good fruit can be bared. So, it all just comes back to our relationship, our communion, abiding, finding this place of rest as we trust in God's faithfulness. So I know desire takes us to our edges, and desire can be quite edgy to hold because our desires, especially as feminine beings, can feel so big, so vast, so expansive, like even overwhelming, because as women, we're naturally designed to desire more, right? We always want more. Even when we receive that which we've longed for, there's always something else that then becomes, another longing. I can see this in my own life. This past year, I held the desire, I just want to be engaged. I want to get married to my beloved. And, my beloved and I got engaged in August. We just got married this last month. Two of my biggest desires have come to fruition. And now I sit in the beauty and nectar of those desires being fulfilled. And now I'm yearning even more deeply to become a mother, to get pregnant, to move into our forever home. And I'm certain once I do have a baby, I'm going to yearn for the next baby, and I'm going to yearn for, the farm and the things that we're co-creating. Like there's just always going to be an expression of more. And that's the beauty of being a feminine being, right? You are a deeply creational being as the feminine. And your essence and beingness, inspires beauty on this earth. But we do have to learn how to devotionally hold our desires and not let our desires own us, right? Really, we can let our desires be what opens us. So, one of three things typically happens as we stand in the space between what we desire and it being delivered. So, the first thing, and this is something that I've tracked in both myself and dozens of women that I walk beside and that I work with. So, the first thing that can happen is desperation. And we can liken this frequency of desperation to like being anxious attached to the desire. And this is when we're really unable to hold the pureness of our desire and channel her creational potency. So we end up in a state of collapse. And that collapse can look like entitlement, right? Clinging to our expectations and preferences. It can look like control, anticipation, really formulating how this needs to happen. It's really this reachy and graspy energy that's held very captive to our ego and is not tethered and rooted to our eros, to that creational life force, that potency of love that exists, as a wellspring within our wombs as women. So when we're in desperation too, it's also likely that we're attaching some aspect of our worth and wholeness to the desire, and we're struggling with circulating the emotions around the desire. And maybe we push our preferences onto others, and we outsource our power or even project our pain body, right? Because we can't hold the desire. So it gets very chaotic and spilly. And in this state, we're really lacking spaciousness and safety for the desire to actually land. So, an example of this could be you desire deeper intimacy with your partner, but then you reject all the ways he's trying to be intimate with you because it's not how you want it, right? It's not according to your expectations and preferences. So you're not fully receiving perhaps the beauty that he's trying to deliver to you, the intimacy that he's trying to connect you with, because it's not going your way. And you're already so overwhelmed and desperate for that intimacy that even when it comes in, you miss it, right? Because you've been so graspy towards it. Another example could be that you desire a partner. And I know this one's very alive for a lot of women. So every time you go out, you're looking, you're looking for him, and your energy is pushing out instead of organically drawing in. And that was something that I totally struggled with when I was single. When I was single, I would have this like anxious, attached energy of wanting a partner so badly that, again, I would always be spilling my energy. I would be looking, I would be searching, I would be clinging, I would be grasping, I would be putting my claws into the first man that was giving me attention. Because again, I can reflect now, I was seeking for my worth and my wholeness in a relationship and in a man instead of finding that with God. So again, union with God is first. We have to develop deep relationship with him, because it's only there that our ultimate fulfillment and worth and wholeness and belonging lives. So it's always coming back to God. So that was just an example of desperation. And it's just a really beautiful invitation to feel in your body. What does desperation feel like? For me, it's like that clawing, clingy, crawling energy. Like my energy is getting spilled out. It's pushing, it's projecting. There's this chaos, this lack of trust. So for you, just tune into your body. What does desperation feel like? And I invite you to take on the posture of that. It's really important that we feel in the soma how these energetic expressions and essences are showing up, so that then when they might be happening in our life experience, we can track it, we can witness it, we can observe it, so that then we won't be overpowered by it, but we can root into our sovereignty and into our potency in this moment to witness, oh, okay, that desperation is here, that clinginess is here, that grasping is here. What does she need to feel more safe and supported right now? Right? Because often those energies are in some way just what's become like a protective mechanism for your survival, right? It's how you've defended yourself, usually in some way, by attaching to those energetic states. So now when we're coming back into devotion, we're really rooting down and in, and we're learning how to hold those frequencies with love and compassion and grace, and really witnessing, okay, what truth lives here? And what does this need to feel more safe and grounded and anchored, right? How can I call my energy back into myself? So explore that on your own. And then the second thing that can happen as we tune into desire, and this is like on the opposite side of the spectrum, is what I call over containment or suffocation. So this would be like the avoidant attached state to your desire. So this is when you suppress or shut down, hide or push away your desires because of your fears, your stories, unconscious unworthiness. You might even judge the desire for being too much. You distrust her bigness and attempt to protect yourself from disappointment by pretending the desire doesn't exist. And disappointment is, I would say, one of our greatest feminine fears, right? We're so afraid of being disappointed, so we often belittle our desires. We stuff what we want down. We bypass those yearnings and longings because we're so afraid, well, what if it doesn't get delivered? Right? What if it rejects me? What if my desire betrays me? What if I'm abandoned by it? And again, we've seen this often through our maternal line, our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, often, again, suppressing their desires, their needs, their emotions, because they were afraid of being disappointed, being let down, maybe not being fully received and seen. So they've just like suppressed that expression into themselves, which only compounds anger and frustration and resentment. And again, we can probably track that through our maternal line and also in ourselves and how we've held that generationally within our own soma and through our own cellular remembrance. So when we're over containing our desires, we're swallowing our truth, which again only compounds resentment, and we're unable to clearly communicate our needs and our wants. Or we might even believe, that others can just read our minds. How often do we do this with our partners or even friends, just think that, oh, well, they can read my mind, so I'm not going to express myself and state what I need, right? And what would support me. I'm just going to make the assumption that other people should know, right? Which is entitled to believe that. So in this, we abandon ourselves and we reject our expression. And when we over contain and suppress our desires, we become dry and brittle because we've drained the life force of the desire and we've constricted her eros, right? So we start to get like dried up, like quite literally when I'm in this state of over containment or suppression, it feels like my cervix just closes and like the water gets drained out of my system and I get tight. My shoulders start to come up towards my ears. Like it's this tight state in my body that feels really bound. And even I would say constipated to some degree. So an example of this would be, you want to make more money, but you're secretly judging other people's abundance and success. So you stay constantly in the loop of questioning yourself and not taking action and making money bad, right? Like, oh, I would love to have more abundance and wealth and prosperity, but I'm judging everyone else that has that. And I'm just going to stay in my own loop of scarcity, which scarcity itself is a beautiful teacher. And I believe the pathway to wealth really asks us to be in relationship with scarcity. And there's a lot I could speak to around money. This is something we explore a lot more inside of the Way of Grace membership. But, we have to really remember what we judge will end up judging us. And our judgments are typically just projections of our own pain or where we're not fully allowing ourselves to be expressed and liberated. So to, again, get curious, right? Bring love, bring grace, bring compassion to this part. You don't need to blame yourself, but to just really witness, what do I judge? What triggers me? What activates me? What are these beliefs that are looping through my mind, my consciousness? And where can I bring these things into the light? Where can I pour love onto these things? And where can I allow those judgments to reveal to me maybe that which I do desire? Right? And that my body and God is asking me to claim more fully for myself, to remember that I am chosen in that desire, right? That desire is calling me for a reason. So, when we're in that over containment, we're just stuffing, suppressing, pushing our desires away. So ultimately, we want to arrive into like true devotional desire, which would be the securely attached state to our desire. And this is where we can feel, hold, and circulate the fullness of our desire with maturity and responsibility. We allow the desire to bring us closer to God into the fullness of love itself. We're able to surrender our timing into God's timing. We're able to tend and nurture the depth of our longing and trust that God delivers on his promises without us needing to interject our own agendas. We're able to clearly communicate and express our yearnings and become the living prayer for all that we long for. And we're really immersed in the present moment. And we let the desire open us instead of own us. So an example of devotional desire would be, you long for a relationship, So you take the desire to God and you ask him to prepare you for your king. You allow her aliveness to fill you with eros and inspiration. And you take responsibility for the woman you get to be to receive the man that God wants for you. And to be in true devotion, you have to be rested and resourced. And I can give you, again, like an example of a couple of my own desires and how I've moved through this process, because I have a couple deep experiences of moving my own desires from this state of desperation and containment into devotion. The first one being my yearning to get engaged. And I've held that desire, very much in my system for the last 2 years. I've been with my partner for 2.5 years now. And it was really in the last year that this deep longing to get engaged came very alive in my system. We always, always, always planned to get married. Our vision was always moving towards marriage and all of those things. But my partner had a pace and timing in that I had to surrender to. And I had a hard time surrendering to his pace and timing, because I was like, why wouldn't this just happen now? Like, we're devoted to each other. We love each other. We're committed to each other. We're rooted, with God in this relationship. Like, why wait? But there was things that my partner was putting in place to deliver beyond my desire. And I remember it was over the summer, it was on my birthday, when I was definitely in this state of being very antsy about getting engaged and really anticipating it. And my partner had surprised me with this beautiful weekend for my birthday at this secluded cabin out in the woods, in nature, on acres of land, just quiet, private, spacious, like my total dream. And he showered me with gifts and love and quality time. And it was just magical. And at the end of this weekend, because again, in my head, I'm like, oh, he's going to propose. This would be the perfect place to propose and get engaged. Like, he's going to do it this weekend. And by the end of the weekend, there wasn't an engagement. And I remember sitting on the Adirondack chair as the sun was going down. And I just felt this sadness in my heart, this despair. And I looked at my partner and I said, I am so grateful for this weekend and your love and your planning and all of the beauty that you brought to me on my birthday. And I'm so disappointed that we didn't get engaged. Why didn't you propose? Like, come on, right? Like, my entitled self coming online. And I'll never forget what he said next. He took my face and he looked me in the eyes and he said, the more you anticipate the engagement, the more you're not only ruining the surprise for you, but you're ruining the process and surprise for me. And that was like a sword right into my heart, this correction and adjustment to have me realize, oh, this engagement isn't all about me. This is also about him, right? Like, total awakening moment. So after that weekend, I just let it go. I brought the desire to God. I knew that God knew my heart better than anyone else. And I said, God, I surrender this to you. I hand this to you. May I trust in your timing, your plan, your provision in this over my own. And just, help me release this into your hands. And I totally let it go. And it was about a month and a half later, my beloved and I were on Cape Cod, on my favorite place, my favorite beach, my favorite place in the entire world, where so many things in my life have happened, and on this land that has held me through really deep, dark, and also joyful chapters of my life. And he came up behind me with the ring and whispered in my ear, will you marry me? And he took me by surprise in that moment. And it was such a gorgeous and romantic moment of love in our union. And again, my man delivered beyond my desires, because God in your partner want to deliver beyond your desire. Like, I can't even think of a better way to have, gotten proposed. Like, it just, again, cracked my heart open and blew my mind. And it was all because I just dropped into that state of devotion around it, total trust, total faith, surrendering my timing into God's hands and into my partner's hands. And of course, I can see now the beautiful orchestration of provision that was through the whole thing, because also, my partner and I always planned to elope pretty quickly after we got engaged. Like, that was always our plan. And, less than 3 months later, we're now married and we had the elopement of our dreams, and everything was just orchestrated so divinely through this entire process. But I had to move from this state of desperation and clinginess and grasping, and again, pushing my partner away in that, because what we pressure, we push away. And in my pressuring kind of all year with my partner, and he told me, every time you pressured me about it, I added another month to the proposal. Like, he had that frame, like he was kind of disciplining me, lovingly, so that I could soften and surrender and really trust in his and God's plan through this. So again, this is a very humbling process. And, another one of my big desires is getting pregnant. And, I had an abortion in 2017, and I've had to move through a lot of reconciliation around that decision, and grief and sadness and despair and all the things that have come up in that. And I've been in this, I would say, mother initiation for 7 years. And now that my union has deepened, the desire to have a baby has amplified tremendously over the past couple of years. And, I'm moving through some different health things and different alignment things going on before I know that baby can come into my womb. And I've noticed myself being impatient around this desire, even having fear that I won't be able to get pregnant. I turned 35 this year, and all of these fear alarms, societally came off of, now you're geriatric and blah, 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 just all of these stories that are not true. But I let that pull me into this state of distrust around the desire, and again, some containment around it, like to protect myself, because I was afraid that it won't happen. And, even when I would go out and take my walks, I would see new mothers and babies in carriages, and I would just like feel like the pang of desperation for having a baby. And now I've been able to shift this into a place of trust and devotion, again, surrender into God's timing, and just following, each step he's been leading me into for my healing and preparation in this process. And now when I take my walk and I see new mothers, I often am brought to tears, but it's like tears of joy, because I'm seeing what I know is inevitably possible. So I'm letting my heart expand and open as I see the possibility of motherhood in and through other women. And that's been beautiful and has expanded me into this state of trust and love with the desire, instead of, again, that desperation and fear and, suffocation of it. So those are just a couple of my own examples. And the space between, our desire coming in and it being delivered is really part of God's provision. This is when we're asked to descend into our held and holy daughter identity. It's when we're really asked to root our worth and our wholeness in God, not the world. It asks us to anchor our faith not only in what God does, but in who God is, knowing that God is faithful. He is the good shepherd. He is endlessly holding you and orchestrating beauty in the most perfect timing. And this space between also asks us to rest in the secret place and find peace as we lean against God's heart. We have to find this space of being fully rested and resourced in God, because God can only fully penetrate us with his clarity, his word, his desires for us when we're in a state of rest. He can only resurrect the fullness of the miracle through our rest, not when we're restless and anxious and worrying and forcing and controlling and pushing and in that chaotic energy. Like the miracle rises from our rest. So we have to find that peace, that trust. And again, knowing God not only for what he does, but knowing his heart and character, leaning upon who he is. And also it asks us to witness any shadows that throw us into that desperation or over containment. And again, to lovingly hold those parts of ourselves with grace. And I know that this part doesn't always feel good, but it's for our good, because again, provision is what God sees as most rightful for you in advance. And God ultimately works for your good, not for your preferences. So as we release our own expectations and preferences, God can actually move a miracle, right? He sees what is most rightful for you in advance, not what you think is most right now, right? And that's a holy crumbling for our egos so that we can be liberated in our eros. And this remembrance that God can do so much more with our faith, our trust, and surrender than we can do with our own control, force, and desperation. Because each step of the way, he's really positioning and preparing us to not only receive, but to have and to hold the fullness of our desire, which is very different than just receiving. Having and holding is a whole other frequency, and having and holding requires rest and spaciousness, not that restlessness. It requires you to anchor into your worthiness and your belief, and it requires responsibility in stewardship, right? It requires you to be able to be responsible and a good steward for what is already here. It's having thankfulness and praise for the beauty that's already present instead of what's not yet, right? So I'll talk more about that in another YouTube, because that's a whole other, expansion. But when we're rested in the assurance of the love that we are and the love we belong to, we become convicted that God is faithful on his promises. This is why, the reclamation of beloved identity is absolutely foundational. And that's why we really root and tether that remembrance in our soma through all of my spaces, because without the belief of knowing how loved you are, you're always going to be restless. You're always going to be restless, even if it's subtle. And you must know your position, which is God's beloved, right? God wants you to understand your inheritance, because it's only from your wholeness that you can receive his fullness. And our trust brings us into a state of rest. Our control and anxiety brings us into restlessness. So for me personally, this is why my first prayer isn't even about what I want, but it's about remembering who I am. God, help me remember and see myself the way that you see me. That can open whole new worlds for you, right? When you start to see yourself as the love that God has created you in, right? In his image, to be the embodiment of love, to be the reflection of his heart on earth, and to know that you're held in this unconditional, boundless, relentless love of God, right? So as we know that truth, the miracles and the desires then just naturally become catalyzed. So I hope that this exploration today was able to support you in holding the depths of your own desires, and has invited you into some exploration of really anchoring into devotional desire and relinquishing desperation and containment and some of these other stickier frequencies that have maybe been pulling and extracting the truth of the desire itself. And I love hearing your reflections and revelations and questions. So don't hesitate to reach out to me on Instagram or email or commenting here. I really love having conversation with you. And again, if you're a woman who wants to descend into her devotional depths and restore her relationship with God and trust in God's faithfulness and heal with the masculine and really resurrect your feminine fullness, then Held is definitely for you. So check out that link below. It has all of the information and details and application for the program. And again, I'm happy to answer any of your questions on that. So I'll see you soon. We'll have more videos coming alive in this space over this next month. And I'm just sending you so much love. May you feel rested in God's love and grace.